Namaste Saraswati Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Bhakshata Deshatari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhar Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhar Srimati Gauravaktari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhar Srimati Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srimati Gauravaktari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhar Srimati Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
Haribo.
Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Maharaj ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Thakur ki jai. Praise Gopal Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki jai. Shri Krishna Prabhu Gopinath Shama Radha Gita Govinda Shri Vrindavan Dham ki Navadvip Mayapur Dham ki Jagannath Puri Dham ki Yogamai Karunamai ki Devi Tulsi Devi ki Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Samarveta Bhaktivinoda ki Nitai Gaur Pranamande.
Haribo.
All glories to the Son of the Lord. All glories to the Son of the Lord.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to those feet of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Namaste Narashivaya.
Singhaya. Radhaladadaine. Hiranna Kashipuri Bhaksha. Nakai. Nishinga, Nishinga.
Yato yato yamitato nishinga.
Yata yata yami tata nishinga. Bhakti nishinga, Hridaye nishinga. Sharanam Kapati.
Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Brinda Ishavrita Hari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha
Advaita Shinga Hiranya Kashipu Tanuvina Jagavita Jai Jagadish Hare, Jai Jagadish Hare, Jai Jagadish Hare. Jaya Prahlad, Prahlad, Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj.
Jayadeva Bhagavan ki
Jai,
Bhakta Prahlad Maharaj ki
Jai.
Hare Krishna. Sorry about that delay right there. Just adjusting the equipment. Welcome all of you to our virtual Sunday Feast program. Everybody joining us on Zoom and YouTube, thank you for coming this evening. We hope that it won't be much longer until we can assemble together here in the temple. But for the time being, we remain virtual. The temple is open for darshan tonight, starting at 6 o'clock to 7:15, as well as during the weekday from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. Tonight, anybody that wants to come after the class, we welcome you. And then also anybody that ordered milk from Gita Nagari can come pick it up at that time. So we want to take everybody on a quick darshan of the deities, a close-up, before we move into today's class. So you can ask everybody to take yourselves off of mute if you are on it and would like to. And we can glorify Srila Prabhupada and the deities. His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
Jai.
Parama Karuna Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki.
Jai.
Jai.
Shri Jagannath, Shri Baladev, Lady Subhadra Maharani Ki.
Jai.
Jai.
There you go. Tried to zoom in there, give everybody a close-up. Most beautiful lordships, Shri Shri Radha Sharad Bihari Ki.
Jai.
Jai.
Jai. So today we have the good fortune. Just give me 1 second. I got the food cart moving through. I'll just take a second. There'll be some background noise. The Prashadam cart. It's the 5 o'clock express coming through. So we have the good fortune tonight to have our class be given by His Grace Acharya Prabhu. Acharya Prabhu is a disciple of His Holiness Satsrup Das Goswami Maharaj. He's a regular giver of the classes here at ISKCON Philadelphia, especially Sunday mornings. Those of you that tune into the Bhagavatam class, he's our the class is given on Sundays. Very very nice and well attended. I know he has a lot of appreciation among the devotees about his classes that he gives. Him and his wife, Mother Sudevi, have lived in the Philadelphia community for the last 5, 6, 7 years. Before that, they lived in the Gita Nagari community. Acharya Prabhu, when did you join ISKCON? In 81. So Acharya Prabhu has been serving in ISKCON since 1981. Wealth of experience and knowledge of scriptures. Tonight we're going to hear from a Vaishnava saint, Jayadeva Goswami. Today is his disappearance day, so we will be dedicating tonight to learning about the glories of Srila Jayadeva Goswami. Acharya Prabhu, he's a resident here in the temple, so he's going to be giving the class from the temple room tonight. Hare Krishna. Yes.
You're muted, Prabhu.
Thank you. Okay, and just give me one moment here. Okay, there it is. This is the last 2 verses of Dasavatar Stotram, actually, for the live attendees. The next to last verse is, I guess that's what's called the Falshuti, the fruits or the goal of the prayer that we've just heard. A lot of standard Sanskrit prayers have that. Even our morning prayer, the Samsara prayers have a Falshuti verse that we usually don't sing. And then the very last verse of it is a summary of all 10 avatars. So we'll sing that. The first verse is sung just like Tavakara Kamala. And the second verse is a different meter like the Sad Goswami Ashtakam, and we'll do that one line by line. Jayadeva Kaveridam Mudita Mudaram Shrinu Sukadam Shubhadam Bhavasaram Keshavajita Dasha Vidharupa Jaya Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare Shri Jayadeva Kaveridam Muditam Mudaram Shrinu Sukadam Shubhadam Bhavasaram Keshava Jita Dasavidha Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Re Jaya Jagadisha Re Jaya Jagadisha Re Shri Jayadeva Kaveridam Uditam Udaram Shinu Sukadam Shubhadam Bhavasaram Keshava Jita Dasha Vidharupa Jaya Jagadisha Re Jaya Jagadisha Re Jaya Jagadisha Re Jayadeva Kaveridam Uditam Udaram Shinu Sukadam Shubhadam Bhavasaram Vidharupa Jaya Jagadisha Re
Jaya Jagadisha Re Jaya Jagadisha Re
Vedan udarate jaganti vate Bhugolam udibrate Vedan udarate jaganti vate Bhugolam udibrate Daityam dharayate balim chalayate Chakshayam gurvate Daityam dharayate balim chalayate Chakshayam gurvate Olastyam jayate halam kalayate karunyamatanvate Olastyam jayate halam kalayate karunyamatanvate Lechan murchayate dasha kritikate Krishnaya tubhyam namah Lechan murchayate dasha kritikate Krishnaya
Krishnaya
tubhyam
Tubhyam
namah Lechan murchayate dasha kritikate Krishnaya tubhyam namah Lechan murchayate dasha kritikate Krishnaya
Krishnaya Tubhyam
tubhyam
Namaha
namah Krishnaya tubhyam namah
Krishnaya Tubhyam Namaha
Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajakacharya Stottra Satta Shri Shrimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai
Jai.
His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai
Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajakacharya Stottra Satta Shri Shrimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai
Jai.
Antakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai
Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem
Jai
Jai.
Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kundagiri Govardhan Ki Jai.
Jai
Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai. Srila Jayadeva Goswami Tirubhav Mahotsav Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinda Ki Jai. All
Jai.
glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All
Hare
glories to Shri
Krishna.
Krishna and Shri Gauranga.
All praise God, Shri Krishna. Jai Shri Krishna.
See, how do I, there it is. Okay, translation. O Keshava, O Lord of the universe, O Lord Hari, who have assumed these 10 different forms of incarnation, all glories to you. O readers, please hear this hymn of the poet Jayadeva, which is most excellent and a water of happiness, a bestower of auspiciousness, and is the best thing in this dark world. O Lord Krishna, who has accepted these 10 divine forms, I offer my humble obeisances unto you. As Matsya, you rescued the Vedas. As Kurma, you bore Mandara mountain on your back. As Varaha, you lifted up the globe of the earth. As Nrsimha, you tore apart the great demon. As Vamana, you tricked Bali Maharaj. As Parashuram, you killed the wicked false Kshatriyas. As Ramachandra, you were victorious over the descendant of Pulastya Muni, Ravana. As Balaram, you are the wielder of the plow. As Buddha, you broadly distributed mercy. And as Kalki, you will destroy the Malechas at the end of Kali Yuga. O Lord Krishna, who has accepted these 10 divine forms, I offer my humble obeisances unto you.
you, Jai.
And okay, very good. That went without too much of a hitch. So this is an excellent prayer, wonderful prayer by Srila Jayadeva Goswami. One way we can understand its importance is that Srila Prabhupada has included it as part of the ISKCON liturgy. I don't know if that's the correct word. It's part of our regular, program that we have a Artik and Kirtan. We chant Hare Krishna. And at the end, we chant this prayer of Jayadeva. And Prabhupada was very fond of it in general. He started speaking about it very early in our movement. There's a really nice lecture back in 1966 when he was he started giving morning Chaitanya Charitamrita classes to the brand new devotees, and he was reading the Lord's teachings to Sanatana Goswami, and he gave one nice class where he did almost every verse of the Dashavatar Stotra, talking about the different avatars. So it's a very wonderful, very important verse. We could see other great acharyas that have been included in our ISKCON program. We have our morning program with Samsara prayers by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, such an important acharya. Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita is largely based on the commentaries of Baladev Vidyabhushan, such an important acharya. His Chaitanya Charitamrita purports are to a large extent based on the commentaries of Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. So all of these past acharyas, certain of them Prabhupada made a special effort to include in our program. And Srila Jayadeva Goswami is certainly one of them. This is a verse from the 11th canto, 21st chapter, text 8. Sri Krishna is talking to Arjuna about, I can't remember the exact title of the chapter, something like Krishna explains the Vedic path. And he says this, a Krishna Saro Deshanam, a Brahmanyo Shachir Bhavet, Krishna Saro Pyaso Vira, Kikata Samskriterinam. The place where there is no black deer, the place with no respect for Brahmanas or no Brahminical culture, the place that is dirty or contaminated, or even places that have the black deer, but where the population are meat eaters and other kinds of uncultured sinners, and the place where no samskaras are performed, or the land that is barren, all of these are to be considered polluted places. So Krishna was talking about the Vedic Past, so a lot of this is related to yagya, the performance of yagya, like the black deer, the Krishna Sara deer, which are mentioned very often in the scriptures. They're worn by the brahmacharis, like you can see Vamanadev wearing a deer skin, and the yogis meditating or sitting on a deer skin. I think that's also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter, that you spread the kusha grass and then you spread the deer skin. So this is the Krishna Sara deer. But even places that have that, if they're not engaged in sacrifice, if they're not engaged in Brahminical culture, then they're desolate places, they're barren places. And in terms of yagya, yagyartat karmanonyacha loko yang parmabandhana, yagya has to be performed. And yagya ultimately means devotional service, working for Krishna. So in the BBT commentary to this, they quote Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati on this verse, who says, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that previously the provinces of Bihar and Bengal were bereft of devotional service to the Lord and were considered impure. Then great Vaishnavas such as Jayadeva appeared in these territories, converting them into holy places. So Bengal, Bihar, I know Bihar gets a lot of bad press in India, and sometimes Bihar is the butt of some jokes. My wife's family or ancestors are from Bihar. But he says all these places, they were impure, but because of great Vaishnavas like Jayadeva, they became pure places because of the introduction of devotional service. So what place is more impure than America? But Srila Prabhupada came here and he brought the teachings of the Acharyas, and he brought the songs and the teachings of Jayadeva Goswami, and he also made America into a holy place or potential holy place. So this is the glories of Jayadeva Goswami in this wonderful prayer. And of course, his Gita Govinda, which we'll sort of get to in a little while. There's not much biographical information available about Srila Jayadeva Goswami. Most of what exists, Prabhupada includes in a short purport in the Adi Leela. I'll read that just for a little bit of biography. This is from Adi Leela, chapter 13, text 42. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, Jayadeva was born during the reign of Maharaj Lakshmana Sen of Bengal in the 11th or 12th century of the Shaka era. His father was Bojadev and his mother was Vama Devi. For many years, he lived in Navadvip, then the capital of Bengal. His birthplace was in the Birbhum district in the village of Kendu Bilva. In the opinion of some authorities, however, he was born in Orissa, and still others say that he was born in southern India. He passed the last days of his life in Jagannath Puri. One of his famous books is Gita Govinda, which is full of transcendental mellow feelings of separation from Krishna. The gopis felt separation from Krishna before the rasa dance, as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Gita Govinda expresses such feelings. So Prabhupada gives this little history, but then he says, but actually some people say he was born in Orissa, some people say he was born in South India. So there's actually a lot of, within the Indian scholarly community, there's actually a pretty heated argument going on. One funny story I saw when researching this is that there's an Indian game show called Kaun Banega Crorepati. I don't know exactly what that means, but it's probably like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Yeah, okay. Who wants to be a crorepati? And in one of the questions, the question was about Jayadeva, and they said, oh yeah, Jayadeva, who appeared in Bengal and was on the court of Lakshman Sen. And because they said that, the TV station got like thousands of letters complaining, you're saying he's from Bengal, but no, he's actually from Orissa, or he's actually from here. And there were protests outside the television studio and letter writing campaign and protests. So it was a big deal. So we don't know that much about it. There's evidence on both sides. If anyone's interested, there's a pretty good Wikipedia article about this argument. But aside from that, he was born, he lived, but everyone agrees he eventually came to Orissa, where he got his education and where he started his tremendous career as a poet. See, and in India to this day, he's so important and so famous. Everyone knows Dasavatar Stotra. Everyone knows the 10 principal avatars, which are, I don't know if they're originally the gift of Jayadeva, that list of 10. I know some Puranas have different lists, and the Srimad Bhagavatam in the first canto, second chapter, is it? Third chapter. There's another more comprehensive list, but this list of 10 is very iconic of specifically the Leela avatars, and his presentation of it is very well known by everyone, and it's so important. And the Gaudiya Vaishnavas love it and chant it, and the Gita Govinda also, and in Orissa, his history there and his songs are so famous that even to this day, as far as I know, every day Gita Govinda is sung in the Jagannath temple, and there's a whole musical tradition there based around Gita Govinda and that style of poetry and music. And even in South India, he's very beloved. And even in Sikh religion, the Guru Nanak, he also praised Jayadeva and included some of his prayers in his Guru Granth Sahib, the Sikh holy book. So he's so beloved all over India. Everyone knows Jayadeva and worships Jayadeva, and his songs are so popular because his poetry and his music is so captivating, so beautiful, that naturally it became a standard and became a favorite everywhere in India. And specifically for us as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we can't overestimate his contribution. Several times, actually at least maybe half a dozen times in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's mentioned how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would relish hearing Gita Govinda. This is from Antya Leela, chapter 17, text 6. It says, to complement the ecstasy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ramananda Roy would quote verses from the books of Vidyapati and Chandidas, and especially from the Gita Govinda by Jayadeva Goswami. And like I said, at least half a dozen times it's mentioned that these three poets were very great favorites of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he would hear them from his devotees, but only from his very intimate circle of devotees. For his general activities and his general preaching, he would preach philosophy and he would chant Hare Krishna. But within his intimate circle, he would hear these beautiful prayers and beautiful songs. Ramananda Roy would sing them. His servant, his sannyasi servant, his name is Swarup Damodar, and others, very intimate servants, would sing this to him. So why was this Gita Govinda, why were these prayers so important and so moving for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? That's because of who Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is. When Krishna in the spiritual world was sporting with the gopis, and he saw the love and the devotion of the gopis, specifically at the rasa dance, when he disappeared from the rasa dance, and all the gopis went mad in ecstasy, and Krishna saw that, he said, "Na pariyeham niravadya samyuja." When I see your devotion, I'm eternally indebted to you, and even in a lifetime of Brahma, there's no way I could pay you back. So this devotion of these Brijavasis is so powerful that Krishna felt himself unable to properly reciprocate. He felt himself a debtor to them. And in fact, that's at the root of the reason for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance, that he's Krishna, he's Akila Rasamrita Murti, he's the enjoyer of all rasas, of all mellows, of all relationships. But here's a relationship that was so powerful that he couldn't appreciate because he was God. So he couldn't appreciate the position of the devotee. So he specifically came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu so that he could appreciate this position of the devotee. The famous verse from the beginning of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is also, I think, from Swarup Damodar's notebook originally, that Radha Bhava Jyoti Suvalitam Nomi Krishna Swarupam, that Lord Chaitanya, he came with Radha Bhava Stuti, he came with the mood of Radharani, and he came with the golden complexion of Radharani, but he's Krishna himself, and I offer my respects to him. So because of this, it's natural that to hear these beautiful songs and beautiful poems of Vidyapati, Chandidas and Jayadeva would be such an inspiration and such a powerful force in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life. So we also want to appreciate them in some way. Prabhupada gives many times, not hints, he gives instructions how we can appreciate them also. This is from the purport of the very first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, just a little bit. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that there is no other paratattva, samam bonam, than himself. Therefore, Sri Vyasadeva at once worships the paratattva, Sri Krishna, whose transcendental activities are described in the 10th canto. Unscrupulous persons go immediately to the 10th canto, and especially to the 5 chapters which describe the Lord's rasa dance. This portion of the Srimad Bhagavatam is the most confidential part of this great literature. Unless one is thoroughly accomplished in the transcendental knowledge of the Lord, one is sure to misunderstand the Lord's worshipable, transcendental pastimes called rasa dance and his love affairs with the gopis. This subject matter is highly spiritual, and only the liberated persons who have gradually attained to the stage of Paramahamsa can transcendentally relish this rasa dance. Srila Vyasadeva therefore gives the reader the chance to gradually develop spiritual realization before actually relishing the essence of the pastimes of the Lord. So this was Srila Prabhupada's idea, that you read his books systematically. You start in the 1st canto, which are sometimes compared to the Lord's lotus feet, and then you advance 2nd canto, 3rd canto, appreciating the Lord's legs, his waist, his body, his arms. Allegorically, the different cantos are compared like that. And then by the time you reach the 10th canto, you'll actually, at least one time he said, by the time you reach the 10th canto, you'll be a self-realized soul. So you could actually understand rasa dance, but at least you'll have an understanding and a philosophical basis and a context for understanding these intimate pastimes, so that we can appreciate them safely without going nuts, without going cuckoo, without becoming a sahaja or becoming unbalanced in some ways. And many devotees, I've experienced myself, not my first time in India, but my first time spending a long time in India. I spent a year in India, and I went a little crazy. You're in India and you start, meeting devotees talking about esoteric subjects and maybe reading some esoteric books, and you go a little crazy, and then most people settle down after a while, understand the context. But that tendency is there, and Prabhupada was very cautious about that you have a proper context, a proper philosophical understanding. Otherwise, you'll misunderstand. So anyway, as I mentioned, Krishna is Akila Rasamrita Murti. He appreciates and relishes all relationships with all the devotees. And any devotee, any pure devotee of Krishna, whether it's Krishna's cows or the trees of Vrindavan, or his servants, or his cowherd boyfriends, or his parents, or the gopis, all of them are 100% completely, fully satisfied in their loving relationship with Krishna. And Krishna himself gets tremendous bliss from the wide variety of relationships with all of the different devotees in all the different types of relationships. He loves all of them, and he experiences all of them and relishes all of them. But still, Prabhupada has said, and the Acharyas have explained, that if you make a comparative study, that higher than Shantaras is Dasyaras, servitude, and higher than servitude is friendship, and higher than friendship is parental, and higher than parental is madhurya or conjugal, and within conjugal, higher than the queens of Dwarka are the gopis of Vrindavan, and highest of all the gopis in Vrindavan is Radhika herself. So we understand this without, like I said, without going nuts or without becoming extremists or anything like that. But this is at the root of the topics of Gita Govinda, that this love between Krishna and Radha is so intense that not only when Radha is separated from Krishna, she laments, but Krishna himself goes mad in lamentation when he's separated from Radhika. So depending on time, we may get to that a little more. So anyway, we appreciate this and we hear about this. And Prabhupada actually, for those who are interested, who may be interested in Rasika subjects, Srila Prabhupada's books have no shortage of such topics. Krishna book, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is so full of these things, but all presented with proper philosophical understanding and with philosophical context, so that it becomes very difficult, nearly impossible, to misunderstand or misuse these things. But at the same time, he always offered many cautions, specifically about this advanced topic. There's one exchange Prabhupada had with his BTG editors, Back to Godhead magazine editors. First, there's a letter. He says, apparently he had seen the preprint, or I don't know what you call it, the galley proofs, before they released one issue of Back to Godhead magazine. And it included the pictures of the Vastrahar and Alila pastime of Krishna taking away the clothes of the gopis. And Prabhupada had this to say. He said, I am in due receipt of the copy of Back to Godhead dated 15th of February, 1967, and I am glad that it is nicely done. The only defect is that picture, which is wrongly put there without asking me. There was no need of interpretations, and why you have interpreted the picture as one has to be naked before the Lord to become perfect. Please therefore consult me before putting any such picture or interpretations. One must understand first Krishna from the Bhagavatam by reading the first 9 cantos. Otherwise, Krishna would be taken as an ordinary man and his pastimes will be wrongly understood. I am asking you, therefore, not to put the picture in the issue of Back to Godhead. I have asked here not to put this picture. So he's repeating himself. And so I am also asking you. I think all of the pictures are not yet stapled, and therefore it must not be put in there. So he's very strong about that the first point is that these things, which can be relished by a genuine advanced devotee, but they're not for public distribution, public consumption, public sharing. Continuing, this is at another time talking to his BTG editors. He brought up this same issue. So Satsarup Maharaj said, so that means that he says, oh, so that means that we can't make any references to the gopis? And Srila Prabhupada said, oh, it is not that the gopis are boycotted. The policy should be that because people may not understand the gopis, they may think they're ordinary girls. We should be careful how we present the gopis. It does not mean that we shall not even utter the word gopis, that we have taken a vow to boycott the gopis. No, they are our worshipful devotees. How can we avoid them? Satsarup Maharaj says, what about the writing about kissing the lips of Krishna? And Srila Prabhupada, no, that you should avoid. That you should avoid. But that is not abominable. That has its place according to the time and circumstances. That thing I have described, fact is fact. When I am describing Krishna's Leela, when I am writing of Krishna's life, I cannot give up that portion of his life when Krishna is actually kissing the gopis in the rasa dance. Satsarup Maharaj, but that's in the books, not in the public. Srila Prabhupada, yes. During Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life, he never discussed in public about Krishna Leela with the gopis. That was reserved for very confidential discussions among his own circle, Ramananda Roy, Swarup Damodar, and so on. So we should remember this. The public may misunderstand these things. Therefore, we have to present them very cautiously, not very openly. So we worship Krishna and the gopis and the relationship of Krishna and the gopis. But we have to be careful, not do it too publicly and not misunderstanding. I wasn't present, but I heard that in the early days of ISKCON, there was a group of devotees who formed what they called the GBC. You were probably present at that time. The GBC, the Gopi Bhava Club. Oh yeah, they were apparently on the West Coast. Yeah, or I don't know if they called themselves or if maybe they got that nickname, but the GBC, the Gopi Bhava Club, and they were devotees who thought themselves so advanced that they would only read the Rasika portions of, Krishna Leela and Rasa Leela and such things. And Prabhupada was not very fond of that. Right. Yeah, avoided. In that context, on another instance, Prabhupada said that Krishna's killing and Krishna's kissing are both absolute. So you don't neglect Bhagavad Gita and you don't neglect the gopis. You don't boycott the gopis either, but everything has to be done properly and intelligently. And the best way to do that is a thorough, regular, constant reading of Srila Prabhupada's books, because he presents everything in the perfect balance. And specifically, he cautioned about Gita Govinda. Gita Govinda's contents are not especially, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say racy because that's like such a material concept. They're not especially like intimate or extreme compared to the things we may read in Krishna book or in Srimad Bhagavatam or in Chaitanya Charitamrita or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's not that it's more extreme, but it's that it's only about that. Whereas in Prabhupada's books, we get a very, like I said, a very measured presentation of philosophy and pastime and explanation and caution. Whereas the Gita Govinda is explicitly telling this story. So therefore he was cautious about it. He wrote one letter to Achyutananda. He said, regarding the songs by Jayadeva, Shrita Kamala is not approved. Sometimes our Krishnadas Babaji sings, but it is not approved by Prabhupada. By Prabhupada means Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada. Those songs are for Siddha Bhaktas, not for us who are Sadha Bhaktas or learning Bhaktas. Lord Chaitanya never divulged in public. He enjoyed that in the company of a selected 3 or 4 devotees. There is one song by Jayadeva, worshiping the 10 incarnations. That song is all right. So this is his caution. The Shrita Kamala is another song. Are you going to say that Achyutananda went on and recorded it anyway? Yeah, he's Achyutananda. So.
There's a previous letter that I added in the letter. Achyutananda is when we wrote to the Prabhupada because he was compiling the first Vaishnava song.
Right.
And he wrote Prabhupada, not saying that, not saying these, the context of the song, but are there other songs that I did responding to? Prabhupada said, yes, there's Gita Govinda, Shrita Kamala. But then about 2 weeks later, he wrote back again, said, but don't put it in the book.
Right.
But by that time, he had already put it in the book.
Okay. And there's also, back in the old days, there was also a tape of him singing. Yeah. So that's the history, but at least the instruction is there that for public chanting, we have this Dasavatar Stotra. And this Dasavatar Stotra is also so beautiful, so wonderful. We know in the Bhagavatam, there's the verse, Ete Chamsa Kalapam Sam Krishnas Tu Bhagavan Swam, is that the yes, that all these incarnations are portions or plenary portions, but Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the Paribhas Sutra of Srimad Bhagavatam, the one verse of Srimad Bhagavatam that forms the whole philosophical basis for understanding the whole rest of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Just like Prabhupada wanted that understanding, that you start with the first canto and you have a proper understanding and then you could go on. So this Dasavatar Stotram is saying the same thing. Here's this amazing avatar, Matsya. He's a giant fish and he's carrying the Vedas, saving it from the ocean. And Keshava Drita, that Keshava, Krishna, has assumed this form. Here's Nrsingadev killing the demon. Keshava Drita Narahari Rupa. He's Keshava, he's Krishna, but he's assumed this form. So it's establishing that same point. So what a wonderful prayer it is, the Dasavatar Stotram. So this caution about Gita Govinda is there. I wanted to give some appreciation of Gita Govinda, but I didn't want to disregard or disrespect Srila Prabhupada's instructions. So what I have is 2 or 3 verses from Gita Govinda that Srila Prabhupada actually were included in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I thought we could read those and talk about those just for a little bit, because he did present those. So this is first verse, actually it's 2 verses in a row. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, chapter 4. And it's from Gita Govinda, the first chapter, text 46. And oops, no, I'm mixed up here. Oh no, I'm correct. It's it's 1 verse from the first chapter of Gita Govinda, text 46, included in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Vishvesham Anuranjanena Jayanan Anandamindi Vara Srini Shamala Komala Rupanayan Angara Nangutsavam Swachandam Rajasundari Virabita Pratyangamalingita Shringara Saki Murti Mani Vamado Mugdo Harir Kridati. Translation: My dear friends, just see how Sri Krishna is enjoying the season of spring. With the gopis embracing each of his limbs, he is like amorous love personified. With his transcendental pastimes, he enlivens all the gopis and the entire creation. With his soft bluish-black arms and legs, which resemble blue lotus flowers, he has created a festival for Cupid. So this is such a beautiful description of Krishna's personal body and his exchanges with the gopis. He's like amorous love personified. And in the story, in the description of Gita Govinda, it's also interesting, this verse is also hinting at how Krishna got in trouble, because he was sporting with all the gopis and exchanging with all of them. And Radharani saw that and she felt a little miffed that why she was not getting particular respect, while she was not getting particular attention, because after all, she is the best devotee and the best worshiper of Krishna. So because of that, she went away. That going away of Radhika is explained later on in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where there's quoting from the 3rd chapter of Gita Govinda. This is from the 3rd chapter, first text 1. Kamsarirapi samsara vasana badha shrinkalam radham adaya ridaye tatyaja vrajasundari. Lord Krishna, the enemy of Kamsa, left aside the other gopis during the rasa dance and took Srimati Radharani to his heart, for she is the helper of the Lord in realizing the essence of his desires. So we can recall back to the Srimad Bhagavatam description of the rasa dance, how Krishna disappeared from the assembly of the gopis, and they said, what's that? Anayaradito nunam bhagavan har ishvara yano vihaya govinda. And I'm blanking on the last line.
Pritoyam Anagraha. Pritoyam
I can't remember
Anagraha.
the last line, I'm so sorry.
Haribol.
But the gopis are saying, oh, Krishna has left us and he's gone off with this one gopi who is not named, but who has worshipped Krishna the best of all. Anayaradito nunam. This one gopi has worshipped Krishna the best of all. And that word, Anayaradita, means who has worshipped Krishna better than anyone else, is a hidden reference to the name Radha, Anayaradita nunam. So this is the pastime in the Bhagavatam, and this is described here, that Lord Krishna, the enemy of Kamsa, he left aside all the other gopis. So he's sporting with all the gopis, but he has a special attraction for Radhika. So he left all of those gopis and he went to be with Radhika in particular. Radhika, who was, what's that Sanskrit? Vasana Badha Shrinkalam. Badha Shrinkalam means that his heart is chained to hers, bound to hers by chains. But then the next verse explains, Itas tatas tam anushritya radhikam anangabana vranakina manasa kritanutapa sakalindanandani tatanta kunje vishashada madhava. Being afflicted by the arrow of Cupid and unhappily regretting his mistreating Srimati Radharani, Madhava, Lord Krishna, began to search for her along the banks of the Yamuna River. When he failed to find her, he entered the bushes of Vrindavan and began to lament. So Krishna left all the gopis of Vrindavan to teach them a lesson in one sense, so they wouldn't be proud, and also so that they would understand that Radha was the best of all of them. But Radha is also teaching Krishna a lesson by disappearing. And when he couldn't find her, he was searching for her everywhere. And when he couldn't find her, he simply sat down and lamented on the bank of the Yamuna. So this is the amazing, intense and special loving relationship between Radha and Krishna, that really they're one. Going back to that verse I mentioned earlier, Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikriti Ladini Shakti Asmat, that the pastimes of Radha and Krishna are direct manifestation of Krishna's spiritual pleasure-giving potency. Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikriti Ladini Shakti Asmat, Ekatmana Vapi Bhuvi Bhuva Pura Deha Bedam Gatoto. That they're one, they're a unity. Radha and Krishna are one. Our worshipable deity is Krishna, and the absolute truth is one. Eko Brahma Dvitiya Nasti. The absolute truth is one, not two. But our real absolute truth is Radha and Krishna together, and they're one. Ekatmanav api bhuvi bhuva paro deha, but they've manifested in the two bodies of Radha and Krishna. And then those two have again become one in the pastime and in the person of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is the topic of Gita Govinda, how much Radha and Krishna love each other, and how all the gopis are absorbed in serving and seeing to the meeting of Radha Krishna, and the suffering of both of them when they're separated from each other. So I actually feel a little bit like I was sort of skirting a line there. I didn't want to do too much, but those verses were presented in Chaitanya Charitamrita. I have a little bit more, but if there's any questions or comments, we could maybe do that first. We end at 6.
Yes,
It's a hard cut for a kirtan.
it's not hard.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the live audience or from television land? Yes, Vishnu Gita Prabhu.
Since we assume that for similar reasons that we don't study the Gita Govinda beyond these 10 slokas, but also that we don't study the words of Jayadeva.
I would say the same thing probably applies, but I have as tiny, I know about Jayadeva. I know literally zero about Vidyapati and Chandidas, but I would say the same thing applies. Similar principle applies. The only thing, I wouldn't definitely say never read it, but Prabhupada was clear that it's not for public consumption, it's not for excessive consumption. I think if someone's, been reading Prabhupada's books regularly for years, maybe looking at it sometime is acceptable, but not necessary. Prabhupada's books are actually sufficient in and of themselves, I'll have to say. Or maybe I'm just rationalizing because I read it once. But just like I said earlier, everything's in context. So when Prabhupada presents it, it's in perfect context. You're reading Bhagavad Gita, you're learning everything, you're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, so you're understanding Krishna. So when you get to the 10th canto, you have a proper understanding. So if you also have a lifetime or years of studying Srila Prabhupada's books, and in that context, you
So make sure
Okay.
you're not making any noise.
Gita Govinda is one example. There are so many, commentaries and books by other acharyas, by Rupa Goswami. If they're in the context of Prabhupada's books, and Prabhupada's books are the main and predominant literature, then I wouldn't necessarily say they're absolutely forbidden, but they have to be understood and handled gingerly. Just like there's that injunction about the Shariraka Bhashya, the Mayavadi commentary of Shankaracharya, that even if a Mahabhagavat reads it, he'll fall down and his spiritual life will be destroyed. But Gopi Pranadana Prabhu told me on that in another instance, Prabhupada said, for study, for research, a serious devotee can read it with proper understanding for analysis purpose. So everything has a context, but the main thing is, if Prabhupada's books aren't the basis of 99.9% of your spiritual reading, then you're going to be very, at least at some risk of misunderstanding when you do come across these things. Even like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he loved Gita Govinda so much But there was that one time he was sitting and he heard this beautiful singing of Gita Govinda in the distance. And because it's Gita Govinda, I don't know Sanskrit, but even from, you could see the poetry of it, and the word usage is so beautiful. And the meter is so perfect that it has been so beautifully adapted for actual singing. So it's such a beautiful thing. And the topic is so beautiful that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard the singing and he went running after it. But then his servant stopped him and said, "My Lord, stop. It's a woman singing. You have to stop." So and then he said, "Oh, Govinda, you saved my life." So even with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had his, time and circumstance for listening to this and for appreciating this. Is that a okay explanation? Okay. Anything else? Question or comments? Hands up. How do I do that? Just click on the hands up or? Okay, Sudevi, unmute and speak.
Okay. Hare Krishna, can you hear me?
Hare
Hello?
Krishna? Yes, Hare Krishna.
You can hear me or not?
Yes, I can, very well.
Okay. So you read that letter, I think it was to Achyutananda about singing Sita Kamala.
Yes.
So if that should not be, but why is it in the songbook? And it was there, and I don't know.
Vishnu probably couldn't be heard. Vishnu Gada explained that
I didn't hear.
In an earlier letter, Achyutananda asked, "Are there any other songs?" And Prabhupada, yes, mentioned yes, there's Gita Govinda. And did he mention Shrita Kamala by name also? At least he mentioned that there were other prayers and other songs. So then I don't know if he just did it innocently, that he included it. Yeah. So he included Shrita Kamala, maybe innocently, but then in a later letter, Prabhupada said, don't include it. Oh, just 2 weeks later. So I'm not sure he was innocent, or Achyutananda is a little headstrong person also. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what happened, but somehow it got included.
What happened was, by the time they included it, and then by the time they got the second letter, it was already addressed.
Oh, okay. So Vishnu Gada says that after the first letter, he included it, but that the book was already going to print by the time he got that second letter, the one I read. So somehow it got included.
And he did, the press laid it out, they were very careful about what was published and not.
Yeah. So somehow or other, it snuck in. Also, is Raja Krishna there with you?
Yeah, he is.
Why don't you turn on your picture so I could see his smiling face while I got you here? Any chance of that? Sorry, having a little family moment here. I've been away from Raja Krishna now for like getting, like 3/4 of a year now, and yes, no.
You can see me. I don't know.
No, I just hear you.
It's just terrible.
There you are. Hare Krishna. Great to see you.
Good to see you too.
Okay. Any other questions? Thanks a lot. Any other questions or comments? Did that answer satisfactorily, Sudevi?
Yes, thank you.
Anything else? I don't see other hands up. Okay, in that case, I'll finish with one last thing. This is, again, skirting the line a little bit. I'm not going to read from Gita Govinda, but I'm going to give the chapter titles of Gita Govinda because it's beautiful, and the titles give a hint to what's happening in the story, and the chapter titles themselves give a hint of what an excellent poet Jayadeva Goswami is. So the first chapter is entitled Samoda Damodar. So if there are any English professors out there or English lit majors, Samoda Damodar, Moda Damo. This is called alliteration. This repetition of sounds is a very common and beautiful poetic usage. Samoda Damodar, joyful Krishna. And the next chapter is called Careless Krishna. when Krishna was being careless and not giving proper respect to Radhika. And that chapter in Sanskrit is titled Aklesha Keshava. So you can see the repetition of sounds, Aklesha Keshava. After that, Krishna becomes bewildered by missing Radhika. So that bewildered Krishna chapter is Mugdha Madhusudana. So it goes on like that. He uses these rhyming sounds and repetition sounds very beautifully. When Krishna is, just like in that one verse I read, how Krishna was simply depressed and lamenting and sitting in the bushes on the bank of the Yamuna, lamenting. So that chapter, Indolent Krishna, is called Kunta Vaikunta. The Lord is called Vaikunta because he's the Lord of Vaikunta. So that chapter title is Kunta Vaikunta. And then when he's ashamed of himself for how he treated Radhika, abashed Krishna, is Vilakshya Lakshmi Pati. So I just love his use of language here, just rhyming sounds and use of language, Vilakshya Lakshmi Pati. And then languishing Krishna is Manda Mukunda. Then Krishna just devises a plan how he's going to get back in Radhika's good graces. So he's being very shrewd. So shrewd Krishna is Chatura Chaturbhuja. And then when he finally meets Radhika again, he's blissful Krishna, Sananda Damodar. And then when he finally gets to be with Radhika alone, he's ecstatic Krishna. And that chapter title is Suprita Pitambara. Krishna's Pitambara, who dresses in yellow silk. So Suprita Pitambara, ecstatic Krishna. So I just find this so beautiful. You could really get an idea of his poetic mood and expression. Even not knowing Sanskrit, you could hear the rhythm of it and the sounds of it, and the rhyme of it is very beautiful. So we can appreciate to whatever, whatever our capacity is. Mine is small, but I'm appreciating that his poetry and his mood were so expert and so beautiful, so wonderful, that not only worshipped by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but all over India, everyone worships Jayadeva Goswami. The North India, South India, Bengalis, Oriens, everywhere they worship Jayadeva Goswami. And it's Gita Govinda, and it's sung every day in the temple in Jagannath. So, and presenting this mood of how Krishna relates with Radhika, which is so specific to our Gaudiya Vaishnava understanding of how we understand Radha Krishna pastimes. So I just want to personally express my gratitude to Srila Jayadeva Goswami and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appreciation of him, and Prabhupada's giving us the Dashavatar Stotram to appreciate him in a way that all of us from the sadhaka stage on up can all understand and appreciate. Hare Krishna, thank you very much. I think I saw a comment on the chat box. I'm not very good at manipulating this Zoom stuff. Okay. One devotee, Mitravinda, is also a poet. She's appreciating the rhyming and the alliteration of the beautiful poetry and the beautiful words of Srila Jayadeva. Thank you for that, Mother.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I wanted to say it's, in the world, there's, rap, which is also an aspect of rhyming for
Sure.
the youth. They get absorbed in that, right? But from a transliterary perspective is what I was saying to you. And transliterary, referring to this being transcendental. Transcendental literary perspective, the sounds are, as you stated, they're so beautiful, and they flow and they fit and they give, there's a beauty, just like a flower. You see the leaves and how they fit together, for example, on a rose, how they fit and they nestle together. These sounds fit and nestle together just in the same way and bring that beauty to the heart.
Yes, from any point of view, Jayadeva's poetry is astounding. What's that verse? What's the use of a poet's words or a bowman's arrows if they don't make the head spin? So from Chaitanya Charitamrita, so Jayadeva Goswami has that power to do that. to make the head spin and to hopefully to purify the heart and help us advance in Krishna consciousness. Anything else? Last online or live comments or questions? Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, everybody. All glories to Srila Jayadeva Goswami. All glories to Srila
Jai
Prabhupada.
Srila Jayadeva Goswami, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai.
Sure, go ahead.
Hare Krishna devotees, thank you so much for tuning in to tonight's class. A special thanks to Acharya Prabhu for his class and all the research he did on Srila Jayadeva Goswami. It was very informative, and I hope that we all learned a lot about this Vaishnava saint tonight. The class is recorded on our Philadelphia YouTube channel, so please feel free to share it. The temple will be open for darshan it's actually started now at 6 o'clock. So anybody who would like to come tonight to come see the deities, you're more than welcome to. The temple will close at 7:15. Darshan hours are from 6:30 to 8 o'clock, Monday through Saturday. We're still continuing with the virtual program through next week. We'll evaluate it at that time, but we're hoping starting in February, we'll be able to open back up for an in-person Sunday program. In the meantime, please feel free to tune into our morning classes, Srimad Bhagavatam, starting at 7:50 to 8:30, 8:45 every morning. Wednesday, we have a Chaitanya Charitamrita class led by His Grace Vishnu Gita Prabhu. In the evening, from 5 o'clock to 5:30, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we have our Bhagavad Gita happy hour. So please join us for that too. At the end of your workday, join us for some Bhagavad Gita. And then on Thursday night, we have from 6:40 to 7 o'clock, we have shloka learning. Again, by His Grace Vishnu Gita Prabhu is leading that. And then right after that, we have our Srila Prabhupada Leela night. We're reading I'll Build You a Temple by His Holiness Giriraj Swami, which talks about the how the Juhu project got built. So many opportunities to tune in and listen while we're still virtual, and we hope to see you throughout the week. Next week we do have a class, or we have a special guest speaker, His Grace Madan Gopal Prabhu from Tuaco. He's currently serving as the zonal supervisor, which means the assistant to the GBC. He's also the North American Communications Director. So we look forward to hearing from Madan Gopal next week. He'll be speaking from his home. He won't be here at the temple. But please tune in for that. Okay, we hope you all stay well. Hare Krishna. Panchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha,
Patitanam Pavane Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namo Anantakoti Vaishnava Keja Slapo Keja
Jai.